If you're going to call yourself a trade journalist, you have to do at least a little bit of journalism and exercise a little bit of skepticism or ask and answer some questions about why should anybody care about this.
Prose and Comms.
Welcome to Prose and Comms, Engagement Unplugged. I'm Brian Rowley.
And I'm Laura Smith.
And today, Laura and I are covering sort of what it takes to engage media's attention. You know, we all like to work with media, but how do we get them actually to want to work with us? And we're fortunate enough today to be joined by a journalist who's pretty much seen it all. Hundreds of pitches, countless campaigns, and quite honestly, isn't afraid to tell us what lands and then what flops. And to be honest, can be viewed as, I wouldn't say difficult, but overly honest at times, when really he's actually, you know, he calls it as he sees it, which I think is something that we probably need to see a little bit more of in the space that we're in. But what makes something newsworthy is something that we actually want to dig into. Why do most brand stories sort of miss the mark? And how do we get media to actually get engaged with us versus just reposting press releases? And at the end of that, it really boils down to companies having a better relationship with media. And I guess if that resonates with you, then you're actually in the right place.
Before we bring on today's guests, we're going to kick off with something we call overhyped or worth the hype, the media edition. So we're going to toss out some PR and marketing trends, especially the ones we know journalists deal with all the time. We'll talk about if they're completely overhyped or actually worth the buzz. Some of these might hit a little too close to home, so you've been warned. All right, here we go. I'll kick off, Brian. AI-generated press releases, overhyped or worth the hype?
Completely overhyped. Completely overhyped.
I feel like, though, you need AI to help, but it shouldn't just be an AI-driven press release. Agree. Okay. Influencer brand collab announcements.
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on the influencer, to be honest with you. I think if the influencer is aligned with the brand and it can appear authentic, then I think I'm okay with it. But if you're just pulling an influencer out there that doesn't really resonate with the brand or what the brand goals and accomplishments are, then I would say that it's overhyped.
Okay. Overly polished thought leadership.
Wait, hold on. You didn't give your opinion. What was your thought?
I agree. I think my gut says worth the hype, honestly, because I feel like if it is the right match, and I was thinking of those like solid kind of activations versus ones that are really just performative. So I would say worth the hype.
Okay.
If done well.
If done well. Yeah. That's the caveat.
Okay. Overly polished thought leadership with no edge.
Overhyped completely.
100%.
But I think on that one, there's a difference between having an edge just to have an edge and actually having something that's worth talking about that has a bit of an edge to it. Like, it's very different. Some people try to create the edge and it feels forced. And I think when you do that, then I think that's actually really a problem. But I think if the edge can be there and it can be there just in normal context, then I think it's probably, you know, the over-polished part is the piece that I think I have the biggest problem with.
Yeah, I think it has to be authentic. That's all, right? It has to be authentic to that person. If that person doesn't have an edge, then it would be off base. But if they've got an edge or they have a perspective that, you know, kind of like will put in question a topic, then I think that's it feels more natural.
Yeah.
Okay. Launching a podcast just to say you have a podcast.
Completely overhyped. And I think just step back for a second on this, right? Think about the amount of time we've talked about having a podcast and the work that we put into this actually just to make sure that it was relevant, making sure that, you know, we had something that we felt we could offer to a group or an industry that was not just, you know, the fact that, oh, Brian and Laura, by the way, wanted to have a podcast, right? It wasn't about that. It was, how do we add insights and value? And I think there's a lot. I mean, I don't know that everybody realizes how much work goes into a podcast, but if you do it well, and the jury's still out whether or not we're doing this well, but the reality of it is if you do it well, it takes a lot in order to get there.
Yep. Agreed. Okay, trend jacking every national quote unquote day on social media.
Yeah, overhyped, 100%.
Overhyped,
yeah,
100%. Events with no hook beyond "we're back."
It's actually kind of interesting because I think actually when we had our conversation with Alicia Henley not too long ago, and we talked about sort of events as a whole, and she was like, make sure you can have sort of that Instagram moment. I think that's an important thing, and not necessarily just, oh, I need a selfie on Instagram, but something that's actually worth it, that people would actually want to make something about it. So for me, I think without the hook, I think completely overhyped.
Agreed. Okay, last one. I put you in the hot seat basically for this, by the way.
No
Okay,
kidding.
throwing AI, authentic or purpose-driven into everything. So anything.
Yeah, it's like we're an innovative company. Like I hate if someone says they're an innovative company, they're not innovative. Like if you're throwing around the AI message too much or purpose driven, then I mean the reality is if you have to state it and people can't figure out your value on their own, then you're overhyping it.
Even though I just used the word authentic about 3 minutes ago. But yes.
We'll let it fly this time.
The fun's over.
Yeah,
That fun's over.
And I guess now that we've challenged the status quo, right? I guess it's the perfect time to bring someone in who really knows like what cuts through the noise. And today's guest is a journalist known for telling it like it is or having a sharp eye for what actually makes a story worth covering. And he started out in daily news, spent a long career in newsrooms, and eventually turned his frustration and buzzword-heavy, quote-unquote, thought leadership into a respected voice in the digital signage space. One would say one that is actually very much drives a lot of the decisions that companies make. He's very influential in this space. And what began sort of as a side project has become a must-read industry news and analyst site, one that pulls sort of, doesn't really pull a whole lot of punches and doesn't do PR like fluff, right? He's known for being brutally honest and for shining a light on the stories that actually matter while calling out ones that don't. And if your press release is all fluff and no substance, he's actually not the person to let that slide. So we're excited to welcome the now quote unquote retired founding editor of 16:9, Dave Haynes. Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you, Dave. So Dave, let's get into the fun part of the conversation. So you've seen thousands of pitches. What makes you stop scrolling and actually pay attention to one of them?
If they're not using boilerplate language, that's a good start. If it's brand X, a world-leading provider of da-da-da-da-da, is pleased to... I'm already falling asleep. I don't care. It's unfortunately rare when you get press releases or pitches where it's immediately contextual. You immediately understand why I should care about this. This company has done this thing, which will allow this to be done X amount faster or lower costs or streamline this or something like. Get to the damn point right away, and that's still quite rare to come across.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dave, that you call that out because, one of the things that it always drives me crazy when you read press releases and it's always like, the biggest or the best or this. And it's always like until this press release launches and then someone else is going to be the biggest and the best. So like, is that really the point of this that you're really trying to call out? Because it's only as good as the time before the release hits or someone pays attention to it and does it on their own. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of, I don't know if I would call it sloppy, but I would say that just things that people, I don't think really, they're more driving towards the needs of the individual business versus the individual needs of a market that they're trying to target.
Dave, do you think that people are tailoring their pitches to you, Dave? Or do you feel like that people are just pitching 10 reporters or journalists and they're just saying the same thing to everybody? Do you feel like it's that one-to-one?
I think there's two different constituencies. People within the ecosystem that I moved in for many, many years, there are certainly a handful of marketers or public relations people who know how I did things or how I do things and will kind of tune it accordingly. And I've even given them a bit of a recipe. Just, here's this stack of things. This is what I need you to tell me. When did this start? Who's doing it? How much did it cost? What technically are you using? What was the return out of it? All those sorts of things. And there's been two or three. There was one company in particular where they copied and pasted that and appended each of the questions with their answers to it, which was awesome. And for the most part, I would use their stuff because I got it. But there's an awful lot of I would say the majority are just broadcasting it out to whoever, and like it's throwing it out the wall and seeing what sticks. That kind of mindset.
Yeah, because making it that easy for people, though, I feel like that's, wouldn't that be great if everyone said, this is the type of information I want and this is how, instead of, I feel like there's so much time probably that people are drafting up their pitch to be kind of fluff and trying to assuming to how to get your attention. So that's, a pretty novel idea that you were able to kind of outline that and get people, you get what you want. And then you still don't have to write about it if it's not interesting to you, but at least you're getting the information you want.
Yeah, there's a pretty big disconnect, I think, in most technology companies in that the people who are doing the public relations, the press release pushes and everything else, tend to be junior within a company, or in a lot of cases, they're not even in that company. They work for an agency, and they don't know anything about the industry. And the people who then review what they write read it and go, well, I guess that's how these things are done, and they approve it. And there's oftentimes the people who don't know anything about the industry are taking their cues from the technologists who started the company. Quite often a CEO at a small company is a technologist first, an engineer, and is in love with his or her stuff and wants to see all the features and specs, and kind of skips right on by, okay, what would this actually mean to the buyer or to the reader? So it's not that often when you get a company that kind of gets together and thinks this through and figures out, okay, who's the audience? What would they care about? And how do we tune the message to them? More often than not, it's just there's a formula that we were taught in public relations school to do it. This is the formula that's been done for the last 40 years. The only thing that's changed is a bit of the distribution methodology, where it's not fax machines, it's now the internet and email. I've been reading press releases since 1979 when I got into the newspaper industry. So I've been seeing it for almost 50 years. And the structure and everything else has not changed, with the exception of adding like social media links, adding images, and maybe video in some cases. But the core structure is the same as it was all that time ago. And it's not because it's great. It's just because that's how it's taught, and it's always been taught. It's
so interesting because so many things evolve, like so much has evolved, especially like we're in technology, like things evolve and advance. That's so interesting because you're right. It has not changed. It is so formulaic. And personally, I'm like, people like, I don't know, if someone sneezes, they have to write a press release. Like all these press releases over not even news a lot of the time. So, but you're right. Like, will someone ever change the game and change it up? I don't know. I mean, they haven't done it for a long time.
I was going to say too, though, the other thing too, though, is, it's not just the way of presenting it through press release, but it's actually, to your point, Dave, not really understanding your audience. So that seems to me like a really simple fix, right? Yeah. It doesn't seem like that's because we look at, okay, these mistakes are being made, right? They've been happening for years. So why isn't it changing? And I mean, if the answer is that there's, a format that's taught that says X, Y, and Z, but why isn't someone changing that? Because it's not working. It's not forcing, I would say, businesses to be at their best, right? It's almost like a check the box to get this done versus really adding value into the industry.
And I think sometimes too, it's also that it's a very junior position in a lot of companies, if it's even a position. In a lot of cases, it's just freelanced out, and that the chances are even lower that they're going to understand the industry.
What advice would you give a marketer? Like, okay, so press releases aren't going away. I think they can decrease probably in a lot of companies and industries. But what advice would you give a marketer if you were today, like one of those junior people, about how to write a good press release?
I have encouraged a few companies to figure out some way to be on conference calls or even go to sales meetings with the customer-facing salespeople and just sit there like a fly on the wall and listen to what's being discussed or what's being asked, you get much closer to what the actual customer need is than you're ever going to get from the CEO or the VP sales or whoever, in a lot of cases, because you're hearing their pain points, and you can start to shape your messaging according to those pain points instead of, here's our latest bells and whistles in version 5.2.3b. People don't care about that. They don't like, what's this going to do for my business if I buy this from you?
Yeah, because it's almost like chest beating moments, right? Like the company has a chance to just like tout themselves, which is just the opposite of what the end customer really cares about.
And so many press releases, again, because it's so formulaic, they will invent quotes, and the CEO of each of the participating companies is thrilled, pleased, delighted, excited, couldn't be happier. Nobody cares.
Yep.
Absolutely nobody cares. If it's rare when you'll come across a press release will say, we did this because this will do this. This goes directly to what we were hearing from our customers. We knew we had to fix it, or we knew we had to enhance it to stay current, and then get it from a customer saying, this is freaking awesome that they did this.
Yep.
Maybe not freaking awesome, but you know what I mean.
I mean, those are probably
Although
bad.
that would be notable.
Well, you'd pay attention to that.
It's interesting. In a role that I had, one of the KPIs that I had was the number of press releases that I actually issued in the period of time. And I was just like, what for what? I mean, literally, Dave, it would have made you just spin in a circle, because it was like the craziest stuff. So-and-so's now this person within the organization. Well, what do you care about that for, right? Like, I mean, there's other ways for us to do that. But still, let's stay on press releases for a second, because it seems to strike a nerve here with all three of us, right? I guess the question I have is, what, if any, responsibility do you think media has to start to sort of filter some of this noise and push back on this? Like, I mean, I know you would push back, right? But let's be honest, there's a lot of colleagues of yours that are out there that just do exactly what we said, right? They copy and paste the press release, they issue it out, and then someone's happy and they move on. So, like, do we think there's a responsibility here for there to be the media to actually filter some of this a little bit more and take a better approach towards it?
Yeah, there absolutely is. There are some competing sites where they will clearly tag and just say, this is a press release, and they just run it verbatim. But in a lot of cases, they will run a press release and put a byline on it, and change virtually none of it.
Yeah, you see the copy paste a lot. It's like the easiest thing for them to do. And I think sometimes it's like, okay, is that a win? They're just taking it and just reposting it. So I do think you've done a great job of, you don't do that, which makes sense, because I think a lot of times, I mean, how many press releases do you get over the fence? You're not going to rewrite all of them, because you only pick the ones that you think are interesting, right?
Well, in a given day, I would get probably 300-400 emails, and of those, maybe 40-50 would be things I could potentially write about, and maybe one or two I would actually get through the bullshit filter, so to speak, and then I would spend the time and just say, this is interesting, and here's why it's interesting, and here's why you should care about it.
Yeah, but I mean, in fairness, we have been on the receiving end of a phone call from you that says, you know what? What exactly are you trying to say here? Yep. Right? I mean, in fairness, we've been there. And you know what? I appreciate that, because I do think that that's important, because we do sometimes get, as marketers within a business, very caught up in what's important to us versus what's important to those that are picking this up. And I mean, I know personally, I appreciate it. And I'm sure others would too. I don't necessarily look at this, if that pushback happens, that, and we've talked about this, right? Some people say that you can be tough. And, I've always looked at it and said, is it tough or is it honest? Because I'd rather take honest any day. And I think that that's what helps us sort of grow the markets that we're all in, and also, just do a better job of what audiences are looking for. So, it's really kind of an interesting perspective.
Well, I think a lot of people also just operate in their own bubble, because they're around this stuff all the day, and you start to forget that not everybody understands what you're going on about.
Yeah, it's like we talk to ourselves. I say that sometimes when I'm like reading something. I'm like, we're talking to ourselves. No one else is going to know what we're talking about. We're not speaking their language. We're speaking our language. So I totally agree that we can get caught up in that as marketers. We have to challenge ourselves to not do that and challenge people internally. Brian, we have that happen all the time when, we're thinking about like messaging and how do we talk about something. It's like, this is the way, whatever you're saying doesn't make sense. But, to us, because we're on the outside, we're not an engineer, for instance. So, as marketers, that's kind of our job, is to make sure we're not talking to ourselves as a company.
Yeah.
But you just said something about the bullshit filter, so I'll just say it too. Why not? Bleep, bleep. So you're not shy about calling BS. We know that. But what PR or marketing trends feel especially performative or pointless right now? Like, what is truly BS?
Throwing AI into everything, I think, is nonsensical at this point. But if you are not working with AI, you're nuts. But I think in order to get any resonance with the ecosystem, you have to explain what you're doing and why it will make a difference to your business, whether you're a reseller, a solutions provider, or an end user. And we've done this, which will take all this work out of the equation. There's an interesting company, a startup in Boston called NetSpeak that I've written about and talked about quite a bit. And they're using AI just to make network operation centers more efficient. So when they get an inbound call and it says this light is flashing, and if it's not something that's overly familiar to them, they can go into their AI agent and it'll in seconds sift through all the trouble tickets, all the archival stuff, and say it's likely this. So something that might have taken 20 minutes to flip through things to figure out what the hell is this, it just gets you an answer like that. So the idea is you can do a lot more with the same team that you have, which is incredible. So those are the things that really matter, as opposed to, we're using ChatGPT to do something that everybody else is doing already, and like, big deal.
Yeah. I think the AI thing is interesting because I do think your point is really one that people should wake up to. If you're not using it, then you need to jump on, because it's here, it's going to stay. But I also think that it's as clear as can be when people put stuff out that is 100% just AI written, and they haven't gone back to make sure that it aligns with their business or the messaging and is somewhat in their voice. It's a great place to start a foundation for things. And I think as we look at it from a marketing perspective, because to your point, like efficiencies within business, I think it's brilliant at that. It will save hours of work in being able to do that, even in a marketing role, right? Like AI can help you in terms of creating flows and all of that information in half the time that it would take you to do it on your own. But it's just a foundation. And I think if we can't lose sight to that. And I think that's something that I think a lot of people do. Dave, if you could rewrite the rules of how brands communicate with media, what would be the number one rule?
Stop talking about yourself and start talking about what this means to the buyer, and get to that point very, very quickly.
That's really, we could end the podcast at this. I think that's really, quite honestly. No, I think it's great advice, because I think we spend so much time talking about things that people don't care about. Like, talk about the things that are important to them. You're just here to help facilitate that conversation. And I don't think enough of us do a good job of that.
Yeah. And the big empty statements about who you are and you're the biggest and so on. Yes, you have to have that validation in there somewhere. That's useful. But you validate once you've got the people hooked and intrigued, like, oh, that's really interesting, and read, and go, oh, so okay, you're a real company. You're not a startup. You're working with all these other companies. That makes me more interested in actually reaching out and talking to you, as opposed to, immediate chest beating of this is the world's largest, we're the biggest, or we're leading. And leading is such an empty phrase that everybody uses for reasons that escape me.
Agree.
All right, Dave, it's time for the part of the show that we call the hot seat. This is where we put our guest on the spot with a rapid fire challenge.
Step by step in you in the hot seat now. It's hot seat, come on and play.
Here's how it works. We're going to throw out some common, maybe overused PR marketing terms. We want to get your gut reaction. You could say something, you could make a noise.
We
you
want
tell us
your
a
real
feel-
gut reaction.
Yes, this is really, remove the filter that we know that you do. So whatever comes to mind, no overthinking it. We're just going to go through about 6 or 7 words, and I'm going to start. Okay. Exclusive.
Contextually, it can be good. It's one of those, it depends.
Okay. Embargo.
Stupid. Waste of time.
Why?
Why? If there are legal reasons, Securities and Exchange Commission reasons why it needs to be embargoed, great. But of all the embargoes of embargoed material that gets sent to me, 99% of it, there's no logical reason for an embargo other than it's again a formulaic thing where you can't write about this until Tuesday at 9 a.m. And I'm looking at, okay, fine, but like I don't really care. But there's a lot of journalists, particularly on the newspaper side, who would just say, well, screw you, and just if you send it to me, it's up.
Dave, how much of what you get is usually under embargo?
I'd say maybe 15%.
Oh, it's low. Okay. Yeah, it's not that high. Interesting.
And maybe that's because they know me.
Like either he'll write about it anyway.
Wait, it's already
Don't
out.
even bother. Yep.
Okay, disruptor.
It's an empty phrase. It's overused.
Inauthentic.
Empty.
Visionary.
Empty.
Strategic announcement.
If it wasn't strategic, why are you announcing it?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Best in class.
Stupid.
I don't think there's any surprises here, Laura. When we were actually putting together sort of our conversation, we were talking about this. I was like, I can pretty much tell you everything that we covered here is going to be empty or stupid.
I love the honesty.
And for a reason. But you know what, though, Dave? Here's the thing, right? Like, we did this specifically because if you go back and look at press releases or announcements or things that people do, right?
Yeah.
This list is very common in most of them.
Right. So which one physically pains you?
I'd say that ones that have Guinness World Record.
You don't get that.
Or, oh, God,
That
yeah.
wasn't on our list, but
Really?
it probably
You-
would be at
Guinness
some
World
point.
Record, you get that?
Oh, I get, about every month I'll get something saying this is Guinness World Record for the biggest something. And I'm reading it and going, well, that's nice, but like, who the hell cares other than the Guinness people who got, like $100 or whatever they get if you register these things.
Unbelievable.
Oh, and Frost and Sullivan Awards.
Oh,
I
yes.
love those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awards you buy.
Exactly.
Dave, unfortunately, time is getting ahead of us here, but we want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective. I know that, it's always eye-opening when I have these conversations with you, and I hope that it actually gives people that are out there that are doing the marketing roles a little bit more to think about when they're actually trying to work and engage with media and understand like what really drives you and what gets you to really pay attention to a brand or to a story.
Yeah, editors don't bite. They just, the good ones just want to know why they should write something about this. So give them context. Think about what's the information they're going to need, and make sure you have that checklist of everything they're going to want. Because, I mean, the other thing that has driven me nuts through the years is so many companies will send me a very lengthy press release about a visual project, and then I have to reply to them and say, do you have any photos or video? Like they just send me like a written description of this visual product. I'm going, did you not have your coffee this morning? Did you skip your meds?
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, especially our industry, we're so visual that we say all the time internally, even we'll say like, we can't just put this in words. Like, we just show it because that's what we do.
Yeah. And granted, sometimes the distribution platforms don't allow it, but if they don't allow it, then think about that and send it separately or something, like put a Dropbox link or something where you can pick them up. It's not hard.
No, it's not. That's not rocket science we're dealing with here, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Dave. It was great to chat with you.
You're welcome.
And as we mentioned, Dave is semi-retired, but he's doing some light consulting. He's writing here and there for 16.9, maybe some podcast hosting and moderating, but he's definitely saving time for gardening and kayaking and avoiding any big commitments or actual jobs. So it sounds like a well-earned semi-retirement, Dave.
Yeah, especially in the summer. When it gets cold here, then that'll...
You'll pick up a bit.
Yeah, I'll get more when I can't go outside. Then I'll be more interested in hanging out at a desk.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, Laura, it's interesting. I think a lot of this is topics that we've covered, but I think, two key points, right, that we talked about was sort of that stop talking about yourself and, minimize the big empty statements. I think those two things just in general, and we see it all the time, right? We constantly read press releases. We're asked to be a part of press releases. We're asked for that quote, right, from our CEO or whoever, just like everybody else. And I think, it's also partly our responsibility to, even as we're going to be participating in something, actually to look at it and say, is it really of value to us, right? Is it value to what the audience that we're trying to talk to?
Yeah, I love the conversation because everything Dave says, we know it. Like, we know this, but it's sometimes hard to get out of the rhythm of what we're doing day to day and expectations that people have internally, et cetera. So I feel like it's like, we know this. I wish every journalist would handle the interactions the same way. Like, that honesty is so important. If someone gave the team a list of things that's all they needed to give and they just pitch that out versus writing these fluffy emails, that makes so much more sense. It's saving everyone time. So I really, it echoed everything we know. We just have to remind ourselves, and as do all other marketers, that this is the best approach, and press releases aren't needed for every little thing.
Thanks for listening. And most importantly, if you like what you heard today, be sure to follow us. If you want to keep up with Dave's sharp takes or reach out, you can still find him on LinkedIn. And of course, check out 16-9, which remains a must read for honest pro AV news and analysis. Thanks for listening.